Welcome to Sisters Inc., our podcast for and about women business owners, brought to you by Black Enterprise. I'm your host, Elisa Gums. Black women are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in America. And on every episode of Sisters Inc., we'll sit down with one successful CEO and share how she slays the challenges of being a Black woman in business. Today's episode is all about building a wholesale business. We're chatting with Amira Rasool, founder and CEO of the Folklore Group, a platform that helps diverse brands connect with retailers so that global customers can discover and shop Black-owned fashion, accessories, beauty, home, and lifestyle products. Welcome to Sisters Inc., Amira, and thanks so much for sitting down with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'd love to hear your background. You have this super successful tech platform, but you're a fashion girl at heart, right?
I am. Yes.
So
Uh,
how did you fall in love with fashion and how did you get from there to here?
Yes, I think it was very organic in the way that I fell in love with fashion. I was very much the child who laid out my outfit for school in the second grade, like 2 weeks before school even started. I was more excited to wear the outfit than to actually go to school. So I think that it was just a natural progression of, just loving to dress really well. Eventually started a blog in high school with my alter ego, Bobby Austin, and would take outfit photos. This is when Blogspot was really popular at the time, and a little bit like kind of pre Instagram. And so, that's really where I found my passion watching, The Devil Wears Prada. And that's really what got me into magazines in particular. So all throughout undergrad, I interned at different fashion publications like WWD and Mary Claire, really wanting to actually, my goal was to be the editor in chief of Vogue at a certain point. I was a journalism major originally. I went to Rutgers Newark and actually ended up changing my major to African American Studies and minoring in journalism. Because after I took my first African American Studies course there, I just became really, kind of obsessed with learning more about our history. I didn't grow up in an environment or an educational system that really taught about, Black history outside of like the main figures, Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks. So I became really kind of like obsessed with learning about our history. And that is really what fueled my educational journey moving forward. And it also changed my idea of what I wanted to do in the world. Went to actually South Africa while I was in undergrad, and just fell in love with all of these brands and the culture, and just finding things that I'd never even heard of before, brands I'd never heard of before. And when I got back to the States, people were stopping me on the street, like, where'd you get this bag? Where'd you get these cool sandals? And I was able to see that, there was a disconnect between the fact that there are consumers like me who are living in the U.S. who want these products. We just don't know they exist. And the brands that, didn't have direct to consumer platforms where they could deliver internationally. And retailers were very oblivious that there was this, fantastic set of brands out there. So that's really what sparked the idea in my head to start the folklore. Is like, I know this isn't just a problem in South Africa, but Africa as a whole. And I also recognize that this is also a problem among diverse communities and Black communities in general. So that's really, I've always wanted to start a business. I just thought I was going to be in magazines for a bit longer because, shortly after I came back from South Africa, I started working full time at V Magazine. And I just kept having this like itching feeling of like, there's a problem. You have like the network where you have the network to solve it. You have the desire to start a business. Why don't you actually be the one to do that? And so that's how I ended up transitioning from magazines to actually starting this business. I left V Magazine to move to Cape Town, South Africa to start the business. So once I got in, I had applied to the University of Cape Town to get my master's in African Studies. Once I got in, I got my 2-year visa, and I just set out to, pursue my studies and to develop the concept for what is now the folklore.
Yeah, and at the very beginning, well, first of all, I know that you took some of the startup money from working for magazines, from freelance writing.
Mhm.
And at the very beginning, it was very much curated by you and your tastes and the brands that you love and
Yes.
selling that to other people. And so tell us about the time that you spent in Africa, like developing that network of designers, because that really laid the foundation for your business.
Yeah, it wasn't easy because I initially started reaching out to people before I moved to South Africa and just, finding people on Instagram and, reaching out saying, "Hey, I'm interested in starting this thing. Will you talk to me?" But no one was responding because it's like, we don't know you. And, that's when I knew it was important for me to actually be on the ground and to build those relationships, because I think just Black people in just Africa and like African people in general, we are very much a relationship driven community. And so I recognize that, one, I've had no real retail experience. I was like fresh out of college. I did have, an impressive magazine, in my back pocket. But other than that, what was their incentive for taking a risk on somebody like me? So that's why when I went out there, I really focused on first telling their stories. So I was freelance writing for a lot of different publications at the time. So I was writing for Teen Vogue. I'd done some contributing to Vogue, to Glamour, some in-style work as well. So I actually got to meet a lot of the brands by actually first interviewing them. And, I would, just to keep my journalistic integrity, I would do the interview, write the article, and then I would contact them afterwards to say, "Hey, I'm also starting this thing. Would you be interested in having a conversation with me?" And so that actually ended up being the way that I tunneled my way into the community of brands there, and then they would refer their other brands. And so I also took that my writing on the road. So I ended up going to Lagos to cover Lagos Fashion and Design Week for Mary Claire, South Africa. So I was able to get my credentials for that and meet a lot of brands from that as well. Went to Ghana, went to Kenya. Also, Kenya was also based off of me writing. So I was able to really take the I guess I would say the access that being a part of the press gives you, and be able to do that job, appropriately, and then being able to, navigate the relationships afterwards to, get them into working with the folklore.
Yeah. So the company has evolved from its early days as an e-commerce site. Last year, you added a wholesale platform called the Folklore Connect. It's the very first B2B wholesale platform focused on diversity and sustainability. Tell us about it. What does it do? How does it work? And why did you make the decision to move in this direction?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, we originally launched the Folklore in 2018 as a multi-brand direct-to-consumer platform. So we, ordered on consignment or on wholesale, warehoused the products in the U.S., and we shipped to consumers directly. And we did that successfully for about 4 years. But a lot of things happened within those 4 years. In particular, the murder of George Floyd, which sparked, a movement of people who wanted to, who recognized the need for them to support Black people at large, whether that's against police brutality, whether that's, supporting our businesses, etc. And so there was a huge demand from consumers that wanted to only shop from retailers and people that were doing good, that prioritized sustainability, that prioritized diversity, and that were really putting their money where their mouth is. And so a lot of retailers started actually working with the brands that we had exclusively carried. So about 80% of the brands that we worked with, we were the only retailer stocking them. And so we actually had retailers reaching out to us, asking us to connect them with the brands that we had spent years cultivating relationships with and sourcing, and literally me being on the ground finding brands. And so I saw that there was a bigger opportunity. I went to the brands we were working with. We sent out a survey asking them what were the areas that, they found the most useful with the folklore, and what are areas in their business they want to grow the most. And they told us, you give a lot of visibility in these international markets, and the thing that we want to grow the most is wholesale. And so the fact that, we've been known to, the end consumer as being great curators, and then we've been known to the brands as being good for exposure. We thought we can combine those things and help retailers be able to meet that end consumers demand for these types of products. And we would be able to provide that visibility to brands so that they could actually get in front of those retailers. So we pivoted in 2022, and we launched publicly the Folklore Connect as a B2B wholesale e-commerce platform where Retailers can source diverse brands or brands that are based in emerging markets. So you'd either have to be based in an emerging market like Africa, South America, Asia, the Caribbean, or if you're based in more of an established market like the US and Europe, you would just have to be a person of color. So that's our mandate, and retailers now have a marketplace where they can source those brands, easily add the items to cart, pay, and receive the products directly to their stores. And brands now have access to manage and run their wholesale business through the platform, be able to create shipping labels, create line sheets, message retailers back and forth, and be able to finally get into these retail stores that otherwise probably wouldn't have found them, because they're not sending people out to Lagos Fashion Week to scout for brands. They're not sending somebody to Guatemala to go look for new beauty brands. But our team is actually on the ground sourcing those brands and making it possible for them to enter into the big retailers that we work with, like the Nordstroms and the Saks, and even the smaller boutiques that also are on our platform.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you realized the value in those relationships and that groundwork and those communities that you had built, because as you laughed saying that the retailers were coming to you saying, "Hey, can we just, borrow these relationships that you built?"
Exactly. Yeah.
But in real life, sometimes it's not so funny because our businesses put in that work, and then the larger companies come in and, it works out for them in a different way.
Mhm.
So, I have to say that I'm glad that you pivoted in that direction.
Yeah,
You
me too. It was not
Yeah.
going to be easy to compete with the Nordstrom. We said, why compete? Why compete when we can just join them and we can work together? The major thing that the folklore has created is for us to be able to provide economic opportunities for diverse communities, create jobs, create exports from these emerging markets. And we're now seeing that retailers' goals are starting to align with ours. And since we have the know-how and the expertise on how to properly work with these brands in a way that's sustainable, in a way that's equitable, that's kind of also that value that we add to these retailers, is that we are speaking the brand's language, and then we also can speak the retailer's language, and we're able to come to some common ground, and create tech to make it even easier as well.
So you provide the software for these diverse brands to help them manage and scale their wholesale business. What are some of the obstacles or the pain points that you noticed that our brands were struggling with when it comes to wholesaling that you wanted to provide solutions for?
Yeah, so I think one of the major things is discovery. So not knowing even how to get in touch with these retailers. So people who join our platform and join via our paid plan, which is Connect Plus or Connect Premium, they can actually go on our platform and message retailers directly. They're able to see the directory of all the retailers that we have on the platform, send them a message. They're also able to respond, even if you're on a free account, respond to any message that a retailer sends them. So the biggest piece is discoverability. Now, once they're discovered and they receive, or even before they receive an order, a big thing that we've noticed is there's just a knowledge gap of how to run a wholesale business. What are some of those basic terms? How do we even create wholesale pricing? What should my margin look like? And so even in our help center, we detail, this is how you should think about calculating your margin. This is what the typical markup price is. So there's definitely a huge knowledge gap in the way that specifically US and European retailers work with brands, that we are even looking to build more technology to address. And so basically, definitely, like from a knowledge perspective, how to properly even put together a line sheet, so people can actually create line sheets based off of a template that we have. So any products they have that they've uploaded, they can click export into line sheets, and we actually have a pre-formatted line sheet for them. So now when a retailer asks for one, they're able to send one that is based off of what the typical norm of a line sheet would look like. So when we first started, we'd ask a brand for a line sheet and they'd be like, "Oh, what?" And we're like, "Okay, so step one, get you a line sheet." So we built that functionality. I think another major thing is when they do receive an order, it's hard to get payment because Nigeria laws change like every other week about how like banking and being in their platforms that used to be able to transfer money to Nigeria. Now you can't. On Monday you could, on Tuesday you couldn't. So we were able to find workarounds so that retailers don't have the stress of having to go find which platform is going to allow them to send money there. They pay with their card through the platform, and we're responsible for getting the money to the brand. So I think those are the biggest pain points, that discoverability, having the knowledge to know how to properly work with these retailers, and then being able to receive payment in an easy and quick and effective manner.
Yeah. I think a lot of small, diverse brands haven't even considered wholesale yet. For those artisans, craft people, producers, designers who are still in that pre-wholesale stage, what would you say are some of the benefits that they should be thinking about of wholesale?
So yeah, I would say in terms of wholesale, one of the benefits is that you are able to use that retailer that you are selling to further to reach a market that you might not have otherwise. So if you are working with a boutique that's in Kansas City, and you're based in New York, a Google ad is most likely not going to be the thing that helps you build your community in Kansas City. It's also not going to be your organic social media. So boutiques in particular have really special relationships with their customers. They, typically work very hand in hand with, they'll call a customer up and say, "Hey, there's a new brand we think that you would like." They'd come in, try it on. Like, boutiques are a place for discovery a lot. And so being able to leverage the customers that the boutique has already um, I guess being able to leverage the relationships that the boutiques have already created with customers is going to help with your brand awareness. So always looking at it from yes, it's a revenue, from a revenue perspective, but also from a marketing perspective, because the more boutiques that you're in around the world, the more likely that your brand is going to become popular in the area that boutique is in. Another thing is, it is very expensive to run a direct to consumer business. I think a lot of people underestimate how expensive it is. Uh, Between shipping, a lot of times, even if you do have a customer covering shipping, sometimes shipping rates fluctuate, so you might end up paying out of pocket for those things. Then you also have to, if you're not packing yourself, you have to pay for the cost of a 3PL. A lot of small brands can't afford a 3PL, so they are packing themselves. So you have to think about the sweat equity involved as well. And then you have to, a lot of times customers are used to the Amazon 2-day delivery. I order it and they want it now. Customers don't want to wait for products anymore. So you have to also take on the burden of producing those products up front and having them ready for a customer as soon as they click buy. They want to receive it in a few days. So that cost of creating inventory that you're not even sure will sell can really cripple a business. And so what wholesale provides is, you're only producing once you receive an order. So most of the brands on our platform, they have the products up, they have how many they can, produce, the lead time that it would take to produce those. So they get the order. Most of them are able to require deposits as well. So that will cover the cost of producing. They ship it to the retailer, and now, they're able to know that, one, they've created more exposure for themselves from a marketing standpoint, and they've also been able to avoid the cost of having to have products pre-made, the cost of having to ship, the sweat equity required to having to pack, ship. So that's really why I encourage it. D2C is very hard now. There's so many different brands. So I would say, Instagram ads, Facebook ads, that's not, it used to be something where you could spend a little money and you can build an audience that way. It's not as straightforward anymore. And you could invest the same amount of time and money into going after retailers and getting into retail stores. And you'd be able to, one, know that you'll have more consistent orders coming through, because most of the time when you work with a retailer, as long as you're doing well and selling well, they're going to keep reordering. So you have that, you're able to have more consistent cash flow and kind of be able to better project what it's going to look like this quarter versus next quarter, because consumers are very unpredictable. And so if you're relying on consumers to to, okay, they did this quarter, so I'm projecting going to do this that quarter. It, we have so many different economic circumstances that end up coming into play. That does impact retailers as well. But at the same time, retailers, if they're in business, they're always going to need inventory. And so you have more of a guarantee of continuing to get those orders from a retailer who's still in business than a consumer that might have been your best customer, but the previous month they just lost their job.
Yeah. And then on the revenue side, when it comes to the benefits of wholesaling, I know that you believe that wholesaling is the future of
Mhm.
scaling for diverse businesses. Can you, talk more about that?
So I won't even just say the future. I mean, I think direct to consumer has been something that has come around more recently with platforms like Shopify, making it easier for anyone to just create a storefront digitally. That has there was a huge like direct to consumer boom between like 2017, all the way up until the pandemic. And I think that a lot of people realized from that that they do need to diversify revenue streams. So I'm never against anybody having direct to consumer. I think it's very important to do both. But I do also think that in terms of smaller brands and diverse brands, wholesale is more optimal because we typically are not coming into businesses with heavy investments or a lot of capital behind us. And so you want to be as capital efficient as possible when you are building a business. And being capital efficient means not spending a bunch of money on inventory, not if you don't even have a customer to sell it to yet. So wholesale eliminates that. You're only making it once an order is put in. And also being able to build really strong relationships with the retailers that you're wholesaling to also is something that can really dramatically um, change the landscape of your business, because you can be doing trunk shows with them. You could be, having them introduce you to other retailers that might not be like competitive to them, or they just, or like, oh, this is somebody in another city that I think would be really interested. So the same way that you want to cultivate those relationships with D2C customers, you do that with your retail customers. So yeah, I just think from the standpoint of, a lot of times we're coming from a lack of means. And we have to really be careful about how we're spending our money and how we're building our business. Wholesale typically is the most cost effective way to do it.
Yeah. In addition to access and resources, you also provide mentorship for the brands on your platform. What do you think brands need to do to get themselves ready for
Mhm.
wholesaling?
So I think they really need to study what it means to run a wholesale business. It's not the same as a direct to consumer business. And I think they need to let their wholesale business inform their D2C business, which I think is something that's often overlooked. You need to understand how your wholesale price relates to your retail price. So a lot of people will have a D2C price, and then they'll just say, okay, if the retailer wants a markup, we'll make our wholesale price 40% of that D2C price that I've already set. Then they find that they made absolutely no money selling to that retailer, because they created those retail prices based off of selling to the end consumer, not selling to that retailer. So really deciding, okay, is wholesale going to be a major part of my business? If so, I'm setting my wholesale prices first. Then and that's based off of me wanting to get X margin when I sell to a retailer. And then I'm going to set my retail prices based off the markup of this wholesale price I've created. So number one is like deciding, what does it look like to create a wholesale business, then setting that price of, okay, well, this is what my pricing structure would look like, this is what I would want to be able to make. That means if I want to be able to make this amount of profit, this is how many units that a retailer is going to have to buy, this is how many styles a retailer is going to have to buy, because you also might be working with an external factory who requires minimum units that are ordered, minimum styles that are ordered. So I say that you have to really do your research and be able to understand, what is an AARP, what is GS1 codes, what is not AARP, that's what is it, um, approved. Let's cut that out. I can't remember what the actual thing is. It's not
The
AARP.
acronym.
Yeah, I can't remember the
Okay.
actual acronym. But yeah, I would say just basically in general, you have to do your research and actually be able to know the vocabulary and how to use that and what that means, and also really know your numbers. And then you need to have a strategy the same way that you'd have a strategy with customers, where it's, I have a list of retailers that I want to work with, and I'm going to reach out to them through this email. I'm going to reach out to them through Instagram. I'm going to be able to send them the line sheet. Here's the pitch that I've created. So a lot of people, we always tell them on our platform, you can't upload your products and then leave the platform and just think that they're going to sell. You have to put in work. We're providing tech, and we're providing support, and we're providing access to retailers, but it's up to you to grow your retail business, utilize this tech, utilize our support, in order to actually grow your wholesale business. It is work. It's could be the same amount of work, if not more, than running a direct to consumer business. But the benefits of it, I believe, really outweigh the direct to consumer opportunity.
One of the benefits of your platform for retailers is that the brands are already vetted. What are you looking for in the brands that you promote, aside from them being diverse or sustainable?
Yeah, so we look for things like how long the brand has been in business. Usually it's a minimum of 2 years. We look at things like, do they have a website? Is it active? Are they active on Instagram? When was the last time they posted? If it was 4 months ago and they post every other month, that's not a brand that we're looking for. If they don't have a website, that's not typically a brand that we're looking for. We look at, do they have global appeal? Will they appeal to the US customers and the European customers that most of our retailers are buying for? We have 4 categories that we focus on right now, which is apparel, accessories, homeware, and beauty. So we look at those categories as of now, and then we look at price point. Right now, we're like a contemporary price point and above, so that's about $150 retail for apparel, somewhere around like $18 to $20 for beauty. So we really are looking at it from the perspective of buyers, because buyers check all those things. They check if you have a website, they check if you have an Instagram, because one thing that retail buyers don't want to do is buy from a company that is not operating as a business. It's like a side project. It's not something that they're very serious about. They will also want to buy from people who've already built a community of their own that they can see, and that's evident on Instagram by the way that their community is engaging with them on social media. They want to be able to see that somebody can come to a website and see that this is a legitimate brand. And so we are basically putting ourselves in the shoes of, a retail buyer, and we're vetting that way, so that when retailers do, approach our brands, they know that for the most part, we've done the heavy lifting of doing that research behind that brand.
Speaking of retailers, you have signed on some heavy hitters: Nordstrom, Urban Outfitters, Bergdorf, Saks, Shop Bop, and more. Nordstrom alone has done 247 million in retail sales from brands owned, operated, or designed by Black and Latinx designers, with the help of companies like yours, of course. So the impact of what you do, and that impact that it has on communities that have been racially marginalized or geographically marginalized, is tremendous. Can you put into your own words why giving these diverse brands access to global retailers and global customers is so important as we look at the bigger picture of Black entrepreneurship and wealth in Black communities?
Yeah, it's important because oftentimes when we create businesses as Black people, they often just stay small. They often die with the person who created it. They often don't last for more than 2 years. And so, by providing opportunities to increase their wholesale business, we're providing a lot of these brands a lifeline that would have otherwise, not been able to make it just from D2C alone, or we're not being able to reach their wholesale goals just doing it manually on their own without having access to a platform like ours. So that's really why we do what we're doing, is because, like I mentioned before, we want to create economic opportunities. We want to create more jobs. We want to be able to help them build companies that, when they pass, they can pass it on to their family, or there'll be a new CEO, or they're selling to, a larger conglomerate, and they're now under a big conglomerate. In the same way that a lot of European and American brands have been able to build these legacy businesses, we want to help create building those legacy businesses. And so in the future, you'll see with the folklore, we're going to start helping brands beyond just wholesale. We're going to be building technology that's really going to help them get to that position. So not all brands might want to be, selling $100 million a year, but let's figure out what are your ambitions and how can we build tech to help that, and then how can we also build tech to help those people who want to have that type of scale for their business. So it's really about listening to our customers, understanding where they are, where they want to go, and being able to build specifically for them and not as an afterthought, which I feel like is what a lot of platforms have done, specifically in the B2B wholesale space. They see that diversity as a trend, and they were trying to get in on it. And at the same time, based off of how they built their infrastructure and how they built the business model of their company, it didn't actually suit the needs of the diverse communities and people in these emerging markets. So we're building with them at the heart of everything that we do, and making sure that we can grow a sustainable and ethical business alongside of our brands, without hurting them, and only with assisting them and making sure that we can both get to where we want to go.
Thank you so much, Amira, for sharing your small business success story. Everyone out there, please take a look at the company website, thefolklore.com. You can also follow them pretty much everywhere on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and LinkedIn at The Folklore.
Yes.
Check out the podcast channel on blackenterprise.com to find Sisters Inc. and other podcasts from Black Enterprise editors, writers, and experts. Be sure to subscribe to Sisters Inc. on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, or YouTube. And if you like what you hear, show us some love by leaving a 5-star review, or put a sister on by spreading the word. I'm Elisa Gums with Sisters Inc. for Black Enterprise. Thank you for listening.